Hey everyone, welcome. I've turned Autosync off on all of my devices right now, and I think it's primarily because I use multiple devices and I haven't seen the battery drain issue. It was other issues that were happening for me. So when it launched, you would have everything trying to sync all at once. So if you opened your device, it tried to auto sync right away. So if you opened your flip cover, automatically it was going to auto sync. Anytime you opened the web app or the desktop app, if you had auto sync enabled, it was going to try to auto sync. So everything was trying to communicate with the cloud at the exact same time. And when I reached out to RADA, they said, whoa, if you have more than one device, that's going to cause a problem. We suggest turning auto sync off on at least one device. It's not as big an issue on the desktop app and the mobile app, I think, because I don't tend to open all of those at the same time unless I'm demoing something. So for daily use, if you have auto sync on and you use one device, I think it should be okay. What I think the auto sync push from the device is, and this is just me as a layman and knowing how cloud services work from an educational perspective, but I think what's happening is every time you make a change and the device auto saves that change in a notebook or in a task or a to do or whatever it is. And it's important to note that the to do and the actual notebooks sync at different, they sync differently. You can enable auto sync for to do and not have it on for the files. So I think it's important to remember those two things. And once you do that, I think that kind of illuminates why this keeps happening or why this changes and why it's trying to sync. As you're making changes in those notebooks, it's trying to keep the files up to date on the cloud so that when you go then to the desktop app, it's a seamless experience. I'm not saying they've gotten there yet because obviously there's some kinks. My issue was multiple conflict files and it wasn't syncing to the cloud, or it was syncing to the cloud and not down to the desktop app, or it was syncing to the device but not the cloud, not to the desktop app. So there were a lot of communication issues. I think the biggest thing now is if you keep the auto sync off and you manually sync, I've seen a lot less issues. Now, that doesn't mean in the future we don't want them to get that right. And I'm just a little hesitant to turn it back on because of what's happened. But at the same time, doing the manual sync, which I always liked on the Supernote device, to be honest, really worked well. And I think reaching out to support anytime you have these issues is really important because there is nobody who is interested at supporting you as a user in this space than Supernote is, that RADA is. I mean, all of the issues that I was having were really, it was amazing. I put in a ticket, I heard back on the ticket, but I also put something in Reddit, and then Mulan reached out to me immediately. And all of a sudden, I was working on the back end through Reddit, through direct messaging, talking to them and the team about, hey, how do we fix this? What are the issues? Can you send us more screenshots? Here's a patch. And I mean, it was really amazing to see the level of engagement they were not just working with on me. And I hadn't done a video on this, so it was just a user on Reddit making a comment. And I think that that was really helpful. Let's talk for a minute. And what you'll notice here is I'm kind of showing off the to do functionality, which I think has gotten a little bit of, I don't want to say bad press, but has been some people don't like it. Some reviewers have kind of taken it to task and said this isn't what we want. Some of the Reddit community has said we want this to be handwritten to dos, um, and I think all of those concerns are valid and all of those things are important. But at the same time, I actually like the way it works, and I think it works really well for my use. If I need to just do a to do in a meeting, in the moment, and then have where I can go back and tick that off. So let's talk about the rollout itself. I think they kind of rushed this. I think that there was a delay with the A5X2, which was a bummer to all of us. I think that the good thing about RADA is they contemplate what they're trying to do. They think through the use cases, they think through their user base, and they try to not rush things to market. There was a delay with the A6X2 for the same reason. There was a delay in getting out some of these desktop apps initially. iOS and Mac didn't launch the same time as Android and Windows did. So I think they were really, in this position where they had been very purposeful in rolling things out at a pace that made sense from a user perspective. And then all of a sudden, they delayed the A5X2. They took a lot of heat from that in the community. Then books came out with the Go 10.3. I think books from a marketing and since they are already saturating the market with devices, from that business savvy perspective, were brilliant in launching the Go 10.3 when they did because you had a lull. Remarkable has nothing new on the market. Big Me's directly competing with books, but they're going all in against the main series of book tabs. Supernote delayed the release of their newest tablet. In comes Books and says, "Wow, we can like throw something in here." And I'm not saying they didn't have purposeful design behind it. I'm just saying that as a timing perspective, it was brilliance. And I'll stand behind that. That put pressure on Rada to release something and to throw something out there that they really wanted to have on the market. And they had done quite a bit of development on the uh, on the desktop app when it came to Windows and mobile, and they'd had it in beta for a while. I think they just released it too early. I mean, they didn't beta test the Mac or iOS versions at all that I know of. Now, I could be wrong on that, but I remember they were very clear about putting the other two out there. I think it was a timing thing. And I think it was sad in some ways for Rada because they did something they don't do, which is rush. And so I think that's a real problem for them. But they handled it well. They engaged Reddit, they engaged Facebook, they engaged their user base, their beta community. I don't know if they reached out to their iOS beta testers, whether they have a separated list for that. I would assume they do, but maybe not. And if they didn't, they probably should have to kind of, pull back and say, okay, what do we do? How do we fix this? From the iOS and Mac side, because I heard all kinds of stories. I'm not a Mac user. I would be interested to hear what Brandon Boswell has to say on this if he tested out the Supernote apps on iOS and Mac to see what that issue was. But I think they went ahead, they threw it all out there, and they said, "Okay, let's do this." And then they had to do damage control. In my case, it took 10 days, and those were frustrating days. And I'll be honest, as a Supernote user and a longtime Supernote user, they were probably the most frustrating days I've ever had in the 3 years of owning the device. But at the same time, the fact that they were willing with that huge time change to be working with me when they should already be in bed or when it was at 10 o'clock at night here in the US and I was doing something and I saw some strange behavior and I'd send off a message and they'd immediately reply through Reddit. That's pretty cool. It's a testament to how they do business. So desktop rollout, we're done. Um, Gives me a real quick segue to say this is one of the things that both I and other people about the to-do list would really like to see. This task is now done, but there's no way to know that in the associated notebook. The notebooks are linked, but there's no way to know now that this task is done. So you're being left with a manual process, which is okay. I mean, some people really get satisfaction out of doing that little tick mark. But at the same time, I think that they've obviously figured out a way to link the notebook and make that work. So it would be nice if they also figured out some way to show that it's been done in both places. That way you can work fluidly. Again, as an organization guy, productivity guy, having to do something in multiple places is never the best way to do it. You always want to maximize your productivity, minimize the friction between you and what you're trying to get accomplished. So let's talk about current functionality. That actually kind of leads right into this. And what I pulled up here is the Supernote desktop app and the Supernote cloud app. One of the things that I think is really interesting about current functionality is this idea that you have a really interesting cross-platform product because the little notebook icon here will take you to that same notebook that you had that we were showing on the device. It's really neat. And now it takes you to the notebook, not to the page. Right now, it's all on one page. So it's going to take you to that page because it's first page of the notebook. But it won't take you directly to where the task is. So it's not linked, even though it's started from the task, it's not linked to the task. One thing that a lot of people have mentioned about functionality for this, which I think is really interesting, is that links throughout your documents are not persistent. And that's a little bit of a worrisome thing. So I did a video on this, and I may put that down in the description afterwards on the idea that you could create an oral exam template to be able to basically take notes on individual people who are having a group discussion and then link to their documents that they submitted beforehand. And you could have all that information linked from a central hub. And I did that, and it worked really well this last semester that I taught. But what it didn't do is now they've made it so easy to move around documents with this desktop app and then it also being downloaded local data that it broke all of those links. So those links aren't relational. It doesn't work like Google Drive does. However, in here, and I can't show this live, but I noticed it the other day. I moved a bunch of things around and then I went to the To-Do app and I went ahead and clicked on the notebook. And even though I had moved those files, it came up with a box, said searching, and it found that To-Do page that it was originally linked to. So I think they have persistent links in this particular app, and it may just be a programming issue. Again, not a programmer, don't want to be, um, don't want to be that guy who's telling programmers how to do their jobs. I'm an educational technology guy. I'm a designer by trade, and that's what I do, and I'm a teacher. So a lot of these things I say are here's what I'd like to see, but I don't really know how to get from A to Z. And I think that's where the programmers at Supernote are really working hard on this. One thing I do want to talk about is the complete lack of a to-do interface on the cloud. And I've talked with Supernote about this, and I think that they're prioritizing the desktop experience and the mobile experience, and they're using the background, and we'll talk more about that with future, that I think they're going to eventually mirror the cloud experience. I have another theory that they may have it act like Obsidian Sync in the background, and that's basically what it becomes, is just a way to shuffle files around. But again, not 100% sure on that. Also, when you go into things, it doesn't put them in the right orders that like how you've done it in your other piece. For example, if I go back to Note, when I first opened this, it was in this format, or it may be in update by time or size. There's no rhyme or reason. It doesn't remember what I've set in the past. And that's a small thing, I know, but it's something that I think they need to work on. One thing I do like, and I do want to show something really cool that I just found out, and this is a current functionality. So I just recently did a blog post, and as you know, I tend to write my blogs on this and then try to take the handwriting conversion into Word, clean it up, and then take it out into Blogger. But what's really neat here, and I just did this blog, and shameless plug, if you haven't read my blog on open educational resources and free resources, please do so. There's a lot of cool stuff in there, and I'm a big proponent of things like Project Gutenberg. And let me go ahead and get back over to the screen share for this. Project Gutenberg, and there's just so much out there. Merlot on the educational side, a lot of different things that you can do. Your public libraries are phenomenal resources. I mentioned in the blog, I pay $51 a year to be able to use a public library all year long. So you can't even begin to replicate that in the private sector. So really a good service. But here's that blog and how it started. And you'll notice I used cursive. Sometimes I write in cursive, sometimes I print. And the Supernote's handwriting recognition is very good. There wasn't a lot of cleanup here. But let me show you something really interesting. So now when you go to export, you can say, for example, I want to do this as text. I didn't export it from the app because it doesn't give me that docx version. I did it from the Supernote itself, which I don't know why the docx isn't here. But when I go to do it, it lets me pick wherever I want to send it. That's been a feature that people have been asking for a long time. So this idea that not only do you have the potential of being able to export, which has been, always going to that export folder, and I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. But then you had to go to a separate place. So ideally, from here, if I was working in a PDF as part of my original note, or if I had those linked, I could export the PDF with the markup file directly into a program like Obsidian. So, or I could export it into Google Drive or OneDrive or wherever I wanted to send it. That is huge. And you can't do that from the device. So I think once they add docx here as an actual possibility, I think that'll be a game changer. It does have search for handwriting on the desktop app. I thought it might because it had this idea of when we went to that export, and let's pop in here real quick and show you. So let's go back to open source again. And it does ask for the recognition language. The nice thing about Supernote is they're constantly innovating. The frustrating thing about Supernote is they're constantly innovating. I think that's with any app or any technology. Do you have to make use of the Supernote cloud to really take advantage of the app? The answer is no, but you'll have the best experience if you do. And I know there's been, and this is kind of a mini rant, and I apologize. There's been a lot of discussion about privacy and security with these devices and people talking about them being from Chinese companies. My information is hosted on a US Amazon Web Services server. That's where my information is. Now, I'm not saying there's no way in the world they can access that information, but it's not going to another country's server if you're concerned about that. And you'll see I reposted something in the community that Kit had posted in his community about this testing that was done on a Books device and how it pinged and where it sent information to and what kind of packets. Far more intricate than what I would do and even understand. But I think that it's important to think through that. If you have the Supernote Partner app installed and you go to open any Supernote file, whether that's on um, OneDrive or Google or your desktop or wherever it may be, it'll open that file. Now, what you lose there is the interconnectivity. So it's not going to then allow you to link around between the notebooks or have the functionality that you're going to have as a direct pair with the device. Not 100% sure how that would work if you did that with the direct integration with OneDrive or Google Drive or um, Dropbox, but I do think that it would cause some friction. But even being able to open those files and view them now natively is a huge advance to where Supernote was, and it's something I've been wanting to see for a long time. The mobile app looks exactly like this, except for one big thing that everyone has recently noticed, and this popped up on Reddit just the other day, but you can no longer import through the desktop app on Android. And I'm not sure why that's gone. You can still add a new folder, you can still search, you can still open, navigate, you can do all of those different things through the app. If you create something in the Supernote cloud, it does filter really well to the other components. That was not the case during that 10-day issue that we had. There were things I was thinking in the Supernote cloud, and I eventually went to only working in the Supernote cloud so that I could keep the communication between it and my device. because the desktop app just quit working, quit syncing altogether. It was hanging up all the time. It wasn't um, matching the structures. It was really having trouble. The fact that these interfaces don't look the same, and this is just me being a guy who works a lot with relational databases, not at the coding level, but at the user interface level, that your fields have to match. Your fields have to match and they have to have the correct relationship set up and created in order for them to communicate properly. And I think that the more you're trying to match something to a system that doesn't have that direct relationship or that direct comparable, the more opportunities there are for there to be issues. That's just my hot take on it. The nice thing about all of these apps is you can check for updates within the app. So if you go to the settings tab here, and you can do your device linking, but you can also go right to the check for updates, and it will tell you whether or not you have the current version. So you don't have to, even in the Android version, you don't have to go to the App Store to update it. You can manually do that from within the app. And I'm showing this with Google or with Obsidian over here on the right and Supernote on the left. And this will be the last thing that I kind of talk about for this particular component, but it's really cool to me, this potential. Being able to access my files now natively in Windows Explorer is really awesome. I went through and did a ton of cleanup between my Obsidian vault, and of course, I can't show that here necessarily because this was in real time with my work data. But I started mirroring my file structure between the Supernote and Obsidian so that as I'm adding notes down the line, I can look in a particular file and then just drop and drag. And the plugin, whether you pull it in through Obsidian or whether you pull it in through Windows Explorer, does its magic in the background. So I could find a note here in the personal side and I could pull that over into Obsidian, and let's see if we can do this here. So let's go back to my blog. Let's go to my test, or let's go to, let's see, let's go to my open resources file. We'll pull it into the root just so you can see that. Now we'll go to Obsidian, and don't worry, we're not going to stay on Obsidian forever. But I just wanted to point this out since somebody had asked. And now that note is there, and not only is it there, but it's already converted it. So here's where I can attach a markdown file to the vault. I can do the images and the markdown files and then process those accordingly. Or I can just navigate this. And it has already converted the text. So it's pretty cool. The functionality of this is one of my favorite things. And it's one reason I like the way Obsidian handles things, but also I love this direction that Supernote is going in if they go this Obsidian route. The idea of being able to have all of these files be able to be manipulated in a much quicker way than either through the desktop app, which is drop and drag, or through the mobile app or the cloud or on device even, to be able to manage it this way and move things around and reorganize and rename and do all of that and then just hit sync and pop, that goes back to my cloud, to my devices, and to my apps. That's amazing. So let's go on a quick rant. And for those of you who know me, you know I don't do a lot of rants. Roderick, he's just smooth. I mean, the way he does his rants, it's almost like you don't even know you're being ranted at in some ways. And he's just great. So if you haven't checked out Rants on Tech, please do so. I'll put him down in the description. He's on my list of people I follow. So let's talk about the Books Go 10.3 versus Remarkable versus Supernote. Books was extremely smart and savvy in the way that they approached this as a marketing item. And I 100% agree with that. I think that they released it at the right time, at an excellent price point, and with some slick marketing around it. Very smart in the way they did that. But what they didn't do is position it as a really um, direct competitor in a substantive way. And this goes back to something that's been stewing with me for a while. Everybody is now putting out content about, is this the remarkable killer? They're all asking that question. And I think what they're saying in substance is that this is basically Books's idea of the same or similar experience if you ignore that it's the Book's device. Now that's my take. So my rant here is that the direct head-to-head comparison for use case shouldn't really exist. What should exist is this Book's device right for you or better for you inside the Book's ecosystem? Because whether or not you believe that you want a Supernote or you want a Remarkable, that is a specific technology and type of technology footprint for that type of device. You aren't wanting to have full Android like me. I chose the Supernote because I didn't want to go as minimalistic as the Remarkable. I didn't want to go as full on Android as the Books. So I went with Supernote because it gave me a good balance. It let me do things I wanted to do without as much friction of having to figure out what and how to turn everything off. And that's what's getting lost in this debate and this conversation that everybody's having. But seriously, I don't think the comparison makes a lot of sense to me. And the reason it doesn't is because you don't buy a Book's device if you want a Remarkable. And you don't buy a Book's device if you want a Supernote. They're different enough to where they just have different functionalities and ways of engaging. Um, One thing I really enjoy, and I love watching Voya's videos, and I watch all of them, even though I don't use my meeting planner and my daily organizer, which are great products, by the way. I still watch his descriptions of them because I'm interested in how his mind thinks. And the first thing he did when he went to review the Go 10.3 was to turn everything off. He turned off notifications. He put on Do Not Disturb. He did all of the things that make a Book's tablet or a Book's device a Book's device. He turned off. So my question then is, why would you buy a Book's device only to turn it into a Remarkable? Now, price point, I'll give you, could be one possibility. But when they have turned off those features, and I've seen the head-to-head comparisons between those two devices, I think Remarkable still wins for writing feel, for ease of use. And even though you've turned off all of the distraction, which that's a whole nother rant for another time about um, distraction free being a catchphrase or being something that isn't a realistic thing. I think there are times for focus, and I think focus is very important. And Remarkable and Supernote both allow you to do that in a very unobtrusive way. But why would you buy the Go just to turn everything off? That's my question. And I think that may be, it may come down to price. And if that's the issue, I mean, Books was smart. They built something that's cheaper. Now it's not all made out of aluminum. I actually like that. I like the Supernote because it is plastic and it's more durable. But at the same time, I think it's really interesting to have this conversation. So my rant isn't that you shouldn't compare devices. I think you definitely should. I mean, I learned what device I needed by listening to Kit and Voya and Brandon, and I said, okay, this is really important. And if you haven't yet, watch Jeffrey Moss's video series on the Book's 10.3 Go. He had to do 4 videos just to cover a fraction of what the thing is capable of. Now, again, if that's the device you want, it is a phenomenal device that gives you all kinds of different potential uses if that's what you want. But if you want all of that and you don't have eye strain issues or you don't have a need for e-ink, my argument would be that you're basically looking at what you really want is an iPad or a Samsung tablet. And if that's the case, then go with one of those because you'll be able to watch video. You'll be able to really look at websites without having to worry about BSR technology or uh, all these super refreshed things that Books is trying to do to, in my estimation, fit a square peg in a round hole. Now, don't get me wrong. Again, this is no shade on Books. I think they're pushing the envelope on what e-ink can do in a lot of ways. I really do. And I'm thankful for that because I think it's improving all devices. And I don't know why it irritated me a little bit to see all of these different comparisons being made. And it's more the thumbnails. We all want to get viewers. We all want to get people to pay attention to what we're talking about. But the thumbnails, is this the remarkable killer? Is it the new distraction-free device? Uh, Truth is, no. Any device can be distraction-free. 100% agree with Kit and Voya and everyone who says that. But we all don't have that level of self control, or quite frankly, in my case, I don't want the hassle of having to go through and figure out how many things to turn off before I can be able to focus on just what I want to do. Um, and I think that's where I can't remember if it was Kit or Voya or who, it may have been Jeffrey Moss, who said they really missed the boat by not having a focus mode where you could press one button and basically on the 10.3 go. And, that's where you can look at this thing here. I mean, they're trying to sell it as remarkable, 100%. They're not trying to sell it as Supernote. They're trying to go after that demographic. But what they missed, at least from all the demos I've seen, is a one button focus mode, turns off everything but the notebooks. And that's it. That would be kind of, and maybe the calendar, you basically strip it down to whatever Remarkable offers at their base. If they really wanted to be a direct competitor, that would be the perfect place to do this. And they didn't. Which means maybe, this is my cynical side coming out, but maybe what they're really trying to do is get more people in the Books ecosystem to realize that they can do more stuff on this tablet than what Remarkable allows you to do. And if that's the case, it's even more sad. Anyway, end of rant. Thank you for the support. Thank you for sticking with me and helping me monetize this channel. This has been a hobby, something that I really just didn't know I wanted to do till late last year, and then now I can't imagine not putting out content. I will see you later.